Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to episode 200 of Filibuster here on the Nerd Party. Not only has your favourite film and TV podcast reached this illustrious milestone, but it is also the end of 2019 and the decade, so we are celebrating with a look back at our favourite films of the year and announcing the Nerd Party's top 10 films of the decade. I'm Dallas King, and with me to join me in the festivities is Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good to be back again.
And Kim Morrison. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. So now technically we are recording this just before Christmas, so we can all enjoy some time off over the holidays, but it did allow some of us enough time to watch the final big releases of the year before making our final list and then laminating it for posterity. Suffice to say, however, I think I'm not expecting to see Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker or Cats on anyone's lists. Would that be fair to say, Lee?
Well, I haven't seen Cats yet, but it will be imminently seen in the next few days. But unfortunately, I've had the displeasure of seeing Star Wars.
Yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment. Now, I'm surprised that you were as disappointed with it as I was, because I am the Nerd Party's Last Jedi apologist. I love The Last Jedi, and it's fair to say that it basically decides to discount everything good that was set up in that film and turn into 2 hours of fan service and nonsense. But what was it in particular that you were disappointed with?
Well, let me get my burn book out. So, as I kind of meant, I suppose, with The Last Jedi, I just didn't think it was a particularly good movie. I thought it had a great A plot with a B plot that was just a real anchor around the whole thing. So, you know, I like the big ideas, you know, the idea that Rey comes from nothing, and, you know, some of these sorts of character dynamics between Luke and Kylo and Rey. That was all relatively interesting enough, this stuff that people seem to have kind of issues with. But as soon as that Star Wars crawl kicked in at episode 9 at like 1 minute past midnight, I knew this film was going to be absolutely shocking, to be honest. It was like red flags were just like coming up straight away, and I had sort of muted expectations going in, and within a few minutes I knew this was going to be a really poor film. And I think, you know, there's probably a lot been written about why this film has been a bit of a disaster so far, but my 10 pence is just, it was an unimaginative kind of film that made me think, well, what was the whole point of this sequel trilogy? We've just ended up where we started off with the Return of the Jedi. You know, everything's kind of back in. It was almost as if nothing had happened or nothing had changed. It was just an absolute waste of time, and, you know, that's one thing I just can't abide, is my time being wasted with things like this. And I just don't understand what the point of this trilogy was. It just was clearly not mapped out, and I think that showed by the end of this trilogy that I had really very little to say on the final stretch.
Yeah, I know. I think it's clear that it sort of was sort of by having different directors and different people writing the scripts, it was all kind of a bit hodgepodge. And, you know, there was certain decisions like, you know, Palpatine's back, but we're going to keep it a teaser. And then, like, the first line of the crawl is, "The dead speak, Palpatine has returned." How? Oh, we're not going to explain that. And then it just sets up loads of stuff like, the Knights of Ren are back. Biggest waste of time, you know, they don't really do anything. You've got, you know, several other characters are wasted. It's like, J.J. Abrams saying, I loved Kelly Marie Tran as Rose Tico, and it's like, hey, Rose, do you want to come on an adventure? Nah, I'm all right, I've got to stay here. Why? I don't know. And then it's like Leia. I mean, I hated the Leia scenes, to be honest. You know, they were just, the dialogue was so awkwardly clunky based around what footage they had remaining of her that they then tried to shoehorn in. It was just terrible. And the only sort of thing that I liked was the Kylo Ren arc across the movie, because huge Adam Driver stan, so therefore it was great. I love that. The rest of it, not so much. I mean, I'm not going to get into spoilers because that's for another time and another place, I think, because, you know, it's only just out and people may still not have seen it yet. But Kim, I don't think you've seen it yet. Does our glowing recommendation make you want to go see it? Or
I mean, I've not seen the second one in the trilogy yet either. I kind of didn't realise I hadn't seen it until this one was coming out, and I was like, oh yeah, I've only seen The Force Awakens. Yeah, I'll still watch them. I think if I was put off by bad reviews, I would never watch half the horror films that I watch in my life. So it's not gonna stop me. But yeah, no, I'm excited to watch it. But I need to catch up on the last one first.
And speaking of bad reviews, but films which are possibly made better by the bad reviews, will you be going to see Cats as well? The nightmare-inducing horror that is Cats.
I don't think it's one of those ones where I don't think I would go and put myself through it in the cinema. But like, if it comes on Netflix or the TV or something, I'll probably watch it for the laughs. But yeah, I don't think I would force myself to watch that in the cinema.
Yeah, no, it's one of the most bizarre cinema-going experiences, and I'm really actually glad that I went to see it in the cinema, because it's just something else. And it's quite clear from all the reviews of Cats is that the people reviewing Cats have never clearly seen the musical of Cats, because they would know by now that it's actually just 2 hours of cats introducing themselves to each other before one of them is selected to be sacrificed to the feline gods. And then Judi Dench will wear their skin as a coat for another year. It's just mental, but in the most horrifically glorious way, I think. And I think it's apparently only made $6.5 million on its opening weekend in the States, which is incredible for a $100 million movie. But I think it will do quite better in the UK, because we seem to enjoy going to see a really bad movie occasionally now and then. But it was the final film that I saw in the cinema in 2019, and it was the year that Blade Runner came to pass, the year that Avengers Endgame concluded the Infinity Saga and dethroned Avatar as the highest grossing film of all time. Yet it turned out the Avengers' greatest enemy was not Thanos, but in fact Martin Scorsese. And a comment in an interview about Marvel movies caused everyone to fall out over Twitter about what is and isn't cinema before they all came together again in love with Baby Yoda. So it's also the year that started out with the blandest Oscar winner of recent years in Green Book, beating Roma, but Netflix looks unstoppable as it heads into next year's Oscars with Irishman and Marriage Story. So, folks, before we get into our best of 2019, how was it for you as a year of film and TV? Lee, let's come to you first. What did you make of it?
I muted Baby Yoda on Twitter, and
you
to be fair,
monster.
As of recording this, like half an hour ago, my football team have been publicly shamed and have just lost 2-0. I've also added them to the Twitter mute list as well, along with numerous other Star Wars things and so on, and film Twitter, I have that muted as well. So yeah, there's been a lot of great stuff out there. But I think ultimately what I've hated this year is the discourse, the tedious kind of navel-gazing, the boring sort of comments about things. The fact that a Martin Scorsese comment can drag on for months and months and months, it's just been so tiring. It's almost just like, can we not just get on with the movies and put like energy and think pieces and blog articles in towards praising films, highlighting films that people aren't maybe necessarily seeing, kind of championing work that we're passionate about. It just feels like there's just so much negativity and so much repetition out there. I just find it a bit too much, to be honest, at times. That's maybe I'm just, as I'm moving towards the mid-30s bracket, I think I'm starting to get older and grayer and more craggy.
Yeah, well, you need to go and think back to The Last Jedi and that wonderful line by Rose where she says, that's how we'll win, not by killing what we hate, but by saving what we love. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to promote our favourite films of the year. We're not going to do a worst of the year. We're going to promote the films that we like. But Kim, how was it for you? Was it a stellar year for film and TV?
Yeah, I think it was quite good. I kind of looked back at my letterbox of what I'd watched this year, and I've watched a lot of films, but I hadn't actually watched a lot of films that came out this year, because I have a terrible tendency to just go back and watch chunks of stuff from like the 90s. But I was just looking, there's a lot of stuff that I watched was like Netflix stuff, like Netflix originals and like new films and stuff on there, and I really like appreciate that. It's quite exciting for me when I don't always get to go to the cinema as much as I would like. It feels nice to be like included in all the new stuff that's coming out and just being able to watch it like online, not always having to go to the cinema for that. So yeah, no, I think it was good, but I think there's definitely, when I was looking at films that came out this year that I haven't seen yet, there's definitely huge gaps in my knowledge that I'll probably fill in about 10 years time.
Well, we do next year's decade list,
Yeah.
we'll have a list of all the films from the previous decade. So.
Yep.
But one thing we have championed this year is the 52 Films by Women challenge. We had an entire episode on it last week that you can check out. But for our final recommendations of the year and of the decade, Kim, let's go to you first. What have you selected for us?
So this might be slightly controversial because it's getting a lot of hate just now on Twitter, and I know Lee hated it as well because he told me. And I just went to see this in the cinema a couple of days ago. So it's the remake of Black Christmas by Sophia Takal. I think it's been getting a lot of hassle because it's not like a straight remake of Black Christmas. It's just a horror film set in a sorority house at Christmas. But while I did have problems with it, mainly the last sort of 15 minutes of very rushed exposition as to what's been going on, I did really enjoy it from this is a very feminist horror film, and we're putting women right at the forefront, and for the purposes of this film, men are trash, and we're just not even going to try and pretend that they're not. And I thought it was really interesting. And yeah, I sort of went into it a bit oh, it's been getting a lot of hassle. And the second remake of Black Christmas that came out in 2006 wasn't my favorite film, whereas the original is one of my favorite slashers ever. It's so good. So I was a bit a bit worried about this one, but I actually think it did quite a good job. It was very interesting and a bit different. I sort of wish it hadn't been rated a 15. I feel like a lot of the kills, rather than go for a less gory kill or whatever so they could actually show it, they sort of went for it and then just cut away rather than show you it, which is a bit infuriating. So yeah, I feel like maybe if it had a bit more gore in it, it would have been better. But I really liked it, and I think a lot of the hassle it got was, I feel like, probably a lot of people just judging it on the whole Black Christmas legacy as opposed to it as a film on its own. So yes, I would recommend going to see it. And if you've seen it and then you still don't like it, that's totally fine. But don't just judge it on what angry old Black Christmas fans are saying on Twitter.
Or old angry Lee fans, I guess. Yeah.
It was quite funny in the office the other day. Me and my coworker had both seen Black Christmas, and there's a song in it that's it's the best part of the film where they take a traditional Christmas song and put sort of a twist on it, all about sexual assault and stuff, and kind of pitch it right to the type of men that really need to hear it. It's the highlight of the film, and it's it's quite a catchy wee number. And then in the office the other day, some Christmas songs were on, and the instrumental of that song played every half an hour, and me and my coworker went to each other, went, is that the song from Black Christmas? And we just started singing the lyrics, in between these two white guys just singing, you took me up to the bedroom and that's not okay, and stuff like that. And it was just the film may not have been my cup of tea in terms of quality, but its impact with that song was certainly felt in office spaces throughout the UK.
Interesting, yeah, because it's one which I hadn't heard great things about, but then reading sort of more about it, it actually sounds like it's got more to it, I think. It sounds like a more socially relevant one with the whole sort of university campus sexual assault sort of thing. So it's one which I probably will check out eventually, maybe next Christmas when it's out on DVD and stuff like that. I could do a Black Christmas triple bill, but I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see next year what I think of that one. So, Lee, what have you got for us on the final stretch?
I'm kind of annoyed that I never got around to doing this one because I could have put this as two films. But I've gone for the 2 Days in Paris. So it's written, directed and produced by Julie Delpy, and it came out in 2007. So it's for those that are like myself that love the Before trilogy. This might sound incredibly familiar, but it's all about her and her American lover walking around sort of Paris and bumping into people. And sort of Julie Delpy has written this wonderful character, Marion, who is a sexually promiscuous woman, and Jack is a neurotic American, and everywhere in France they seem to bump into her ex-lovers, and he becomes more and more paranoid that she is having an affair which threatens to ruin their several days in Paris. This is such an incredibly amusing comedy. It also spawned a sequel a few years later, 2 Days in New York, when Adam Goldberg had been replaced by Chris Rock for some more crazy French antics. It's one of these films I would highly recommend. It's one that I find myself going back to quite a lot.
Yeah, no, I do like that one. I saw it many years ago, and I think it's Eddie from Friends, isn't it? It's Goldberg, yeah. So that's always a good shout. But yeah, no, excellent choice. And my final choice is one which is not out for a couple of weeks, actually, out in January, but I saw it at an unlimited preview, and that's Marianne Heller's A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which is the Mr. Rogers film. Mr. Rogers, massive deal in the States. Over here, wasn't really too familiar with him, but I was expecting this sort of biopic about this reporter who goes to interview him and stuff, and then it's like someone sort of says, "Don't ruin my childhood," by going to interview him and stuff, and I'm thinking, oh my god, it's going to turn into like a Jimmy Savile type of thing, where it turns out Mr. Rogers is actually not as a saint-like as he is, but it turns out it's a completely different film to what I was expecting, and it's sort of like an examination of sort of like anger and grief and working through your issues and stuff, and really, really impressive. And this is like the second film in a year almost for this director. She also did Can You Ever Forgive Me, which had Melissa McCarthy and Richard E. Grant, which stormed the Oscars last year, so she's possibly going to appear at the Oscars this year, so she's having a great sort of 12 months, and it's one that's highly recommended by me, especially even if you don't know who Mr. Rogers is or aren't too familiar with the story. It's a great film nonetheless. So yeah, that rounds out 52 films. And Lee, do you know roughly how many films we've recommended over this entire year?
Give me 2 seconds. The grand total is, including these ones, was 119 films over 52 weeks.
Well, that's a hell of a lot more than 52. So I think if you haven't done it this year, you could basically start with that list and work all your way through. And we'll be doing it next year as well. I'm not sure if we'll be sort of giving the recommendations on the show every week, but we'll certainly be announcing, and you can keep track with us on Twitter and stuff like that. But I guess it's time to go into our best films of 2019, so it's going to be interesting to see if any female-directed films make it into those lists. Now, for purely due to time constraints, what we're going to do is we're going to run through our films from 10 to 6 just as a list, and then we're going to go on a round table from 5 to 1. So Lee, let's come to you first. Do you want to give us your 6 to 10 for your 2019 films of the year?
Yeah, so at 10, I've got Burning, 9, The Farewell, 8, Marriage Story, 7, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and 6, Parasite.
Okay. And Kim, what have you got for us from 6 till 10?
At 10, I've got Doctor Sleep. At 9, I've got Us. At 8, I've got Midsummer. At 7, I've got Knives Out. And at 6, I've got Booksmart.
Excellent. And I have at 10, Knives Out. 9, The Farewell. Aniara at 8. Midsummer at 7. And Little Women at number 6. So, Lee, let's come to you at number 5. What have you got for us?
Yeah, this was one we talked about last year. I caught this at the 2019 London Film Festival. It'll get a wider release next year in the UK, and that's Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So, on an isolated island in Brittany, at the end of the 18th century, a female painter is obliged to paint a wedding portrait of a young woman. So, there's not much else to say really beyond how passionate we kind of were about this film last week. This was one of the real highlights of the year. I think it was Cannes maybe where the buzz started to come out from it, and I felt that there was so much buzz for it that I thought this film had already come out and was had dropped onto Netflix or something like that. The intent, it was that kind of well praised, and then I caught it at London, and just the 2 performances have kind of stuck with me since, and it probably contains one of my favourite endings of a film this year. I think that's kind of a bit of a trend actually with a bunch of these films today. So yeah, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, definitely one to see in the new year for those that haven't seen it already.
Yes, and this is going to be a running theme for Lee's list, because it's always a bone of contention of how do you structure your end of the year lists, and I always go by UK release dates. Lee always goes by films that I have watched in 2019. So he might have a few more that are basically you'll be able to enjoy in 2020, but all the ones that I'm going to give you are ones that you can enjoy in 2019.
I should add, in terms of films that I watch, it has to have had a cinema release in the UK, so that can count as a festival release or a film. So it's not necessarily maybe like you won't get anything, say, from 1997 that I'm just getting around to watching for the first time. It will have been something that will have screened within the UK, whether that was like an unlimited preview screening, you know, a month early, festival, you know, anything like that. That's kind of my way to go, I think.
Oh, okay, cool. Kim, what have you got for us at number 5?
So at number 5, I have got One Cut of the Dead. I think this actually came out in like 2017. I was looking, I know that I'd heard about it for ages, but it didn't come out in the UK until January this year, and it is streaming just now on Shudder, which is how I watched it. It's a weird one. I can't actually say too much about it without spoiling it, so I'm not going to ruin it for you. But basically, it's a film about this crew who are filming a zombie film, and like 5 minutes into the film starting, they get attacked by real zombies, and you kind of think you know where it's going, and then you don't. Kind of halfway through it shifts, and it was just amazing. It was one of those ones I was watching and I was like, I'm not too sure if I like this, and then it kind of shifted and I was like, oh my god, this is so good. And there's a whole chunk of it that's just shot at the beginning in just like one continuous take, and it's so much fun, and it's just really different from like other zombie films. I feel like it's really easy to get zombie fatigue. So many of them are the same. It's just fun, and it's funny, and it's a bit different, and it's just like nothing I've ever kind of really seen. And I probably shouldn't have picked it to talk about because I can't really talk too much about it. But yeah, if you have Shudder, go and watch it. It is amazing. It's so much fun.
This is one which I really want to see. People were raving about it at the beginning of the year, and it's just one that for some reason or another just haven't been able to track down. I'm not sure if it's had a proper sort of DVD or Blu-ray release in the UK, but it's based on your recommendation. It's almost enough for me to basically sign up to Shudder on Prime Video and do it, at least for the 7-day free trial. Watch it and then cancel it again. So, if you can recommend a few others for me to do in those 7 days, then I'll watch them and then I'll cancel it as well. So,
Cool, will do.
Cool. So for me, at my number 5, I've got one of probably the most underseen and undervalued films of the year, especially by its own distributor in America, A24, and I've gone for Under the Silver Lake, which is a sort of neo-film noir with Andrew Garfield, who is sort of investigating the disappearance of his neighbour, that also links into the strange underground sort of world of sort of homeless people who've got their own sort of network. There's also someone killing dogs and stuff like that. It's sort of Mulholland Drive meets The Big Lebowski meets Brick, and it's very difficult to sort of sum up in a paragraph, but I think there's a scene at the very beginning where he's walking through his apartment block, and then a squirrel sort of lands on the floor just falls down dead and sort of looks up at him and gives him a look. And it's like, if you're on board at that point, I think you'll really enjoy this film. A lot of people just didn't get it, but I think if you're in the right frame of mind, or you enjoy that kind of quirky sort of thing, it's by David Robert Mitchell, who did It Follows. So he managed to do a new spin on the sort of 80s sort of stalker slasher movie, and he's done the same thing here with film noir. I really liked it. I think, Lee, you really liked it when we saw it at the Glasgow Film Festival, and it's one which I think that people should hopefully seek out and watch based on our recommendations.
Yeah, this one was a bit lower down in my list. If I hadn't stuffed it with 2020 releases, it might have been a bit higher.
Cool. So, Lee, next, what's up for you at number 4?
So, another film from 2020 in the UK, and that is Waves. So, the less kind of you know about this film, the better, and that's not just my excuse to rest my voice. This is a film where I think if audiences go in not knowing really what to expect, they're going to be in for a hell of a treat. But if we just kind of boil it down to that, it's an kind of a very emotional journey of a sort of suburban African American family, and sort of how that family splinters apart and deals with the consequences of quite a heinous act. It's from Trey Edward Schultz, who we're quite a fan of, me and Dallas, I know for sure, and this was a film that absolutely blew me away, and it's been one that I'm curious to see what UK audiences think of it. I think when you watch it, there'll be a bit of whiplash really in the middle, and I think that can kind of maybe split some audiences. For me, I felt that whiplash, but it's a movie that's stuck with me for kind of well over 2 months now, and I can't stop kind of thinking about it. And in a few weeks' time, we'll have interviews with the director, 5 of the cast members as well, so we can kind of really dive into the film then. But yeah, this is a film that when you see, you'll understand why it's had such an impact and managed to make its way so high up into the list.
Shameless plug there, but always on brand. I like it, Lee. And I like the way that you're basically picking films that most audiences haven't seen yet, and therefore you don't really have to say anything because then it would go into spoiler territory. So you get nice, you're teasing everyone for next year. I like it. So, Kim, what have you got at number 4?
At number 4, I've got Happy Death Day to You, which is a sequel to Happy Death Day. So Happy Death Day is about this girl who wakes up on her birthday and gets murdered by a killer, and then she wakes up again on her birthday and realizes that she's stuck in like this time loop where she keeps getting murdered over and over and over again until she can sort of solve who is killing her to kill them first. And I was a bit skeptical about how they were going to do a sequel to that because it seemed like they'd kind of wrapped the story up quite nicely. But the way they kind of do it is that it turns out the original time loop was created by this sort of machine by like sciencey students at the university, and one of her friends who was running it, he kind of, in trying to fix the time loop problem, sends her into like another dimension where she's stuck in the same time loop again, but with like a parallel version of all her friends trying to help her. And yeah, I thought it was a really interesting way to do it. Impressed that they managed to make a sequel that I thought was kind of as fun as the original. The killer's not like directly hunting her in this one, so there's a lovely sequence set to Hard Times by Paramore where she just has to commit suicide at the end of every day to reset the time loop, and rather than doing it and like finding one chill way to commit suicide and just doing it over and over, she finds like really inventive ways to do it, like throwing herself into a wood chipper or skydiving in a bikini and landing in front of her ex-boyfriend and exploding. So yeah, no, it's really fun. For a horror sequel, I think they did a really good job of sort of keeping up the uniqueness of the angle of the first one, and yeah, it's a good mix of like hilarious but scary and quite gory as well. So
yeah, no, I saw that one and I really enjoyed it. The first one was a great sort of twist on the Groundhog Day one, and yeah, like you, I was skeptical that how they were gonna pull it off, but I think they managed to come up with a story that was worthy enough of telling the sequel. So yeah, no, definitely recommended that one. For me at number 4, it's one which I think we all loved, and it is Booksmart. Basically telling the story of 2 teenage girls who are wanting to have one final night of debauchery before graduation, and for me this was probably the funniest film of the year, hands down, and contains, Billie Lourd's character is one of my favourite characters of the year. The way she kept popping up everywhere in this sort of Penny Lane style was just fantastic, and it was so much better than Superbad, and it was just hilarious. What did you guys make of Booksmart? Because I think it was on your list, Kim, and I think Lee, it was on your list even if it was slightly further just out of your top 10.
Yeah, I love this film. I painfully related to Amy quite a lot. As someone that doesn't know how to pose in photos, I tend to often just get like the peace sign out or something like that. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I just need to like have a prop or something like that. And if I don't have one, I just use my fingers or something like that. So like the gif of her just sort of like awkwardly putting their little peace sign fingers up is something that's incredibly relatable to me. And it's a film I've really enjoyed. It didn't get a Blu-ray release here, so I bought the HD digital copy from America. And I've kind of watched it quite a few times now, since it's such a great film to just sort of put on and enjoy or have on in the background. It's kind of a kind of world and characters I like being around, and I kind of wish I was at school with them.
Yeah, I loved it as well. Like, I haven't watched it since the cinema. I really need to buy it, but I feel like it's one of those films, like a total like comfort film. It's like all the kind of teenage films I used to watch as a teenager, and I would just put them on to like feel just nice and happy. I think it's definitely one of those that would join that rotation. It was really funny, but like not like, I don't know, like some teen movies are just kind of like throwaway or whatever. It felt like it was making a point, and it was just, yeah, it definitely is definitely one of my favorite. Yeah, I just missed my top 5 sadly.
Cool. So Lee, what have you got for us at number 3?
The best film of 2019, Her Smell. This is a film that in the first 10-15 minutes of it, I I thought I might have to leave the cinema, and I've heard people have actually had similar reactions where it is so stress and anxiety inducing that you feel uncomfortable, you don't know how you're going to sit with a film that I think it's just in and around sort of 2.5 hours, sorry, 135 minutes. It's a hell of a film, and I love films that put you in that kind of headspace of feeling uncomfortable, that provokes that kind of emotional reaction. It's the story of Elizabeth Moss as a musician who has a self-destructive kind of streak, and the film takes place in 4 parts as we sort of see her career kind of spiral into the ditch, and then sort of her resurrection. So it's a bit similar to kind of last year's number 1 Vox Lux, which technically could be this year's number 1 of 2019, but that's another story. This is just a fantastic film. I think Elizabeth Moss has had a fantastic year, and I think this performance here is just second to none. I just think this is like a modern masterpiece, and you can buy it for $2.99 just now on Amazon Prime. It doesn't cost much at all to purchase this film. So yeah, it's a film that was really done a dirty with a UK release. You know, I caught it at the Glasgow Film Festival, and unfortunately I don't think many people have had the opportunity to catch it in the cinema, which I would imagine would be the best place to sort of experience Her Smell. And it has an amazing soundtrack, which I think Kim would love as well. So I don't know if you'd like this film very much, but I think you would enjoy the Spotify playlist.
Nice.
Just the line, the cinema is the best place to experience Her Smell, is just yeah, it's just one of those, okay, it's like the smell that you'd get after, say, 9 hours of a Star Wars triple bill with everyone in one room for that length of time. So Kim, what have you got for us at number 3?
So for number 3 I went for It Chapter 2. This is a weird one because I feel like there are probably films a bit lower down the list that probably should be higher than this, but I was just so excited for it when it came out. I thought the first part of the thing did such a good job of bringing the book to the big screen and sort of missing out parts that the miniseries had missed. And I mean, obviously we did a whole episode on this, so I talked about it quite a lot. I think the second part did probably I feel like as good a job as film could probably do to show a lot of the mad shit that Stephen King wrote, because a lot of it's just probably not going to transfer very well off the page onto the screen. So I feel like they did the best job that they could. It was maybe a bit long, and I feel like if I'm going to sit down and watch one of them again, it's probably always going to be the first one. The bit with the kids is always the best one. But I was so excited just to see how this finished, and just to see what they were going to do with the whole end sequence with the terrible stop motion spider that they had in the TV miniseries and things. So I feel like my hype for how into this I was knocked it up the list a few places, because I'm a massive Stephen King fangirl, and this was, it was really exciting to finally get to finish the story in the cinema.
Yeah, no, I think I was not as keen on it as you were, but the discussion we had on that spoiler episode was enough to make me sort of think again, and I think I'd like to revisit it perhaps. And I think there was rumoured talk of an all-in-one sort of director's cut where it would be chapter 1 and 2 all together, which is an ongoing theme, because it's just been announced that Doctor Sleep will get a 3-hour-long director's cut, which I'd be keen to watch as well, because there was enough fascinating stuff in that film that I'd be keen to see a bit more of that world as well. So and I think It Chapter 2 was certainly better than the It Chapter 2 of the old series, because they slightly improved on the, like you say, the stop motion spider, and the acting from the adults, and the adults they picked in that were much better than the ones that were in the TV series anyway. So I think I'm keen I would definitely rewatch it when it comes out on Netflix or something like that, and see how my views have changed on that one. Me, I've gone for number 3 is a film which I think was on Lee's list last year, because that's how he works. And I've gone with Barry Jenkins' If Beale Street Could Talk, which was just one of the most heart-achingly beautiful films which I watched this year. The score, I think by Nicholas Patel, is just immense, and the sort of story of two people who fall in love but are then pulled apart, and you're just hoping for them to get back together, only for them to, spoiler, not. And it's such a kick in the teeth, but it's just so beautifully directed, acted and scripted that it's just one of the most beautiful films of the year. And I don't really want to say much more about it because, yeah, you can enjoy it and experience it for yourselves. But yeah, Lee, I think you had this one on your list last year, didn't you?
Yeah, it's managed to make it into my top 10 of this year of kind of UK release dates. So yeah, like this was an absolutely lovely film. I really enjoyed it the first time, and I kind of rewatched it again this year, and it kind of, I think it's even better than I thought. So yeah, a real special film. I can't wait to see what Barry Jenkins does for his third film.
Absolutely. So Lee, we're back to you. It's getting tight at the top there. What have you got at number 2?
So this was a few hours ago, another film, but then they swapped round again because I got to rewatch one of them, and that will be 2020's Uncut Gems. So this one was the top spot for a little while, and then back to 2, but it's such thin margins between this and number 1. But Uncut Gems will be dropping on Netflix at the end of January, but be in cinemas in early January in the UK, and I would encourage everyone to see it in the cinema because it's a very communal experience, kind of undergoing the stress and anxiety that Uncut Gems produces. So all about Howard Ratner, played by Adam Sandler, a charismatic New York jeweler, always on the lookout for his next big score, who makes a series of high-stake bets that could lead to the windfall of a lifetime. So this was a film I was so incredibly hyped for. I was 100% sure this was going to be the surprise film at the London Film Festival. I think when we went into the cinema, I had that full confidence, and as Dallas will testify to, when it was announced, well, it was indicated that this film was directed by a pair. I think I let out a whoop and a cheer of like, yes!
He did.
I did. I was so hyped for that. That recently happened with Parasite at the Odeon Unseen screening, where it was a bunch of white men in the cinema screen that clearly all went thinking it would be Parasite and let out audible noises when it was. So yeah, Uncut Gems is a film that I absolutely adored in the cinema. Again, it was a sort of roller coaster experience of stress, anxiety. I think Adam Sandler puts in an incredible performance, and if he does not get Oscar nominated, we have done a huge disservice to him. I think this is his finest film, and I loved him in Punch Drunk Love, but this film is just something special. It's got an unforgettable ending, brilliant score, and I think it's probably the Safdie brothers' best film so far.
Oh, bold words, because Good Time is very good, but, you know, Adam Sandler he could do an Eddie Murphy and, you know, have a really good role, but then release another terrible Netflix film and people might remember that and then gloss over him when it comes to the Oscars. But yeah, no, I can concur on Uncut Gems, just fantastic, and who knows, it might appear on my list next year when it actually is released in the UK. But that's the point. So Kim, what have you got for us in second position?
So for number 2, I've got Someone Great, which was a film actually I think you, Dallas, recommended for the 52 Films by Women thing, and then I went and watched the trailer on Netflix, and it's Gina Rodriguez dancing in her pants singing Lizzo, so I was like, yes, I'm in for this film. Like, why have I not seen this sooner? I just loved, like, there's a lot of films, I was looking at this in my letterbox, a lot of films when I rate them, they're 3 or 3.5 stars. That seems to be my middling of I didn't hate it or I didn't love it, and I finished Someone Great and I was like, this is amazing, I'm gonna watch this like so much. It was just so much fun. It's about Gina Rodriguez's character sort of just breaks up with her boyfriend because she gets offered a job at Rolling Stone, and she has to move across the country. And even though they've been going out for like 10 years, he breaks up with her. And it's sort of her story of like a last night on the town with her pals before she moves across the country and like just trying to get over her boyfriend. And I just loved it because I had the feel of kind of like a teen movie I would watch as a teenager, but obviously with actual adults. So they were like going out and getting drunk and having sex and doing drugs and hanging out in RuPaul's flat because he was their drug dealer, not as actual RuPaul, but the actor. And it's so much fun. It was brilliant. It had a great soundtrack, and it just felt like a total feel-good film that you just watch all the time, and I would just never get bored of it. It was just such a lovely representation of like female friendship without having anything like any nasty kind of tinge to it. It was just great, and I loved it. So yeah, I was so happy when I finished watching it, and I need to go and watch it like a million more times. It was amazing.
You know, that was one which I watched purely because of the 52 Films by Women challenge, and it was on Netflix, and Netflix is so great for a challenge like this where you just got so many films. And yeah, I sort of looked at it and was like, oh, it's set in New York, great, I'll watch it. And yeah, and actually found it really surprisingly enjoyable. So yeah, a great choice. And for me, I've gone with the highest grossing film of the year, Avengers Endgame. Basically, you know, it's not perfect, it's not a perfect film, but in terms of a perfect ending to the sort of 10-year saga of what they've delivered so far, it totally is perfect. And I don't think I've had as big a grin on my face in cinema for a long time as I have in like the last half hour of that film. Basically from Captain America picking up Mjolnir and then the sort of on your left portal sequence. Oh, it's just everything you could want from, you know, this sort of 22 film saga, bringing all the characters together into one sort of final sequence. And yeah, it's just so enjoyable, and that's why I've got it at my number 2. It's not a perfect film, but in terms of pure cinema, I'm sorry Martin, I'm sorry Scorsese, but it's pure cinema at that point. It's tough to beat, but one film did it, and we'll find out what that is in a couple of minutes. So Lee, what have you got for us in the top spot?
So I've gone with The Lighthouse. I got to rewatch it again today. So me and you both got to catch this one at London, and I think it was safe to say this was one of our most anticipated films of the year. Starring Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe, about 2 lighthouse keepers that try to maintain their sanity while living on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s. So I think this comes out late January here in the UK. This was a film that I absolutely loved, and then I started to doubt myself a little bit. I was like, well, maybe Uncut Gems was maybe a little bit of a better film, and it was available to buy digitally from America on Friday. So I woke up on Friday to my pre-order having already been downloaded onto my TV, and I got the chance to rewatch it today. So I watched the first 50 minutes, then I watched my football team get spanked 2-0 by half time and switched that off and went back to The Lighthouse, and I was like, yeah, I think this one edges just Uncut Gems as sort of the best film of the year, because I think this one is just a complete vision from everything about it, the production design, the acting, the script. There's so not to belittle any other film that's come before this, but this just feels like a complete vision from Robert Eggers, and I think he has absolutely created a modern masterpiece here. I think before it's even been released here in the UK, it feels like it's become a film that's become memeable, quotable, you know, unforgettable. I think when people get the chance to see it, it's going to be a real conversation starter. I think though, I was watching it and I had the subtitles on at one point because I was just doing a quick bit of editing work, and I was just thinking like, oh, I bet that bit's going to be like quoted on like Twitter or something like that, you know, and so on. I just think it's honestly a modern masterpiece, and I genuinely, after going from The Witch to The Lighthouse, I'd love to see where Robert Eggers go next, because I cannot imagine, and that really excites me. And I just think, yeah, you've got to spill your beans and, you know, catch this in cinemas next year when it comes to the UK, or catch it digitally now in America, because it is just incredible.
Yeah, and I guess we've got to thank Tottenham for getting spanked 2-0, because you've actually switched them since you actually sent me the list at 2 o'clock this afternoon. You gave me your list, and it has changed before recording. Those two got switched around. So basically, the fact that you managed to rewatch it before recording this podcast has, helped Robert Eggers steal the top spot at the very last second. So there we go. But yeah, I can concur on all that Lighthouse stuff. It was my favourite film at the festival, will definitely be in my top 10 for next year, and is the perfect film for anyone who has ever been tormented by a seagull. So, Kim, we've reached the top spot for you. What have you chosen?
My number 1 film of the year is Ready or Not. I think it had to be a horror film, obviously, and much like when I finished watching Someone Great, when I finished watching Ready or Not, I was just like, I just want to watch this again. Like, it's so good. I went to see it in the cinema like 2 days before it was getting removed. We had to go at like 11:30 at night because it was like one showing, and it was in this tiny little cramped corner of the View in Hamilton that basically looked like a broom cupboard, and there was about 20 seats in it crammed in there, and I was like, I am so glad we came to see this because it's amazing. It's about this girl called Grace, who is marrying her husband, obviously, and her husband's family are wealthy. They sort of have a board game dynasty thing going on, and they have a tradition where on their wedding night, they ask the new person coming into the family to play a game, and it's just for fun, unless you pull hide and seek, in which the family will try and hunt you down and murder you before dawn, because their ancestor made a deal with the devil, and they think if they don't kill you before dawn, they'll all die. And it's just it's so good because it's like Samara Weaving running about in her wedding dress and a pair of like mustard Converse. She like rips the bottom of her dress, and she's got like a gun, and she's just running around like trying to murder all her in-laws before they murder her. And it's just brilliant. It's so funny and like really like dark humor, and there's so much like violence and gore and so much blood, and it's just, it has a real like sort of cabin in the woods like vibe to it, of just like, it's a very good horror film, but it's also just hilarious and you're just having a great time while you're watching it. And yeah, I cannot wait for it to come out, because I just want to watch it like over and over again. I cannot recommend it enough. It was just so much fun. So yeah, that's my number one.
Yeah, I was going to say that I really enjoyed this one as well. I think there's a lot of horror films you find yourself rooting for the killer because all the sort of teens that he's hunting are really terrible and you want them to die. But in this way, you're really behind Samara Weaving's character and you want her to hunt down and kill all the family because they are just awful. But, she's fantastic. I think I first saw her in, I think it was 3 Billboards, and she just sort of steals every scene that she's in, and she's going to be coming up next year as one of the daughters in Bill and Ted Face the Music. So I think she's got a huge sort of future ahead of her. So I'm very excited to see what she does. But I was also very excited to see the Nail from A Quiet Place make a cameo in this film as well, in one of the most, oh no, they're not going to do it, and they're doing it, and it's like, oh, it's just one of those cringe-inducing moments. Not as bad as the degloving scene from Gerald's Game, but it's certainly up there.
Like, I was a victim of it not getting a long enough cinema run. Though the poster for the movie seemed to be outside my office for quite a while. I was really gutted to miss this one. So I rented it a couple of days ago from iTunes USA. So I've got that to look forward to over the Christmas period. But to put that, I don't put these PR emails to waste. You can add Ready or Not to your digital download collection on the 27th of January and own it on Blu-ray, trademark, DVD and VOD from the 10th of February. So those that want Kim's recommendation, that's how you can find it soon.
Fantastic. Thank you, PR Lee.
Yes.
Cool. And so I guess it's time for my one, and it's probably no surprise given a couple of episodes ago where I was effusive in my praise for this, because I don't think any film has hit me harder this year than Marriage Story by Noah Baumbach. Just utterly superfluous filmmaking for me. The acting of Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson is fantastic, and as I said, my favourite time in the cinema this year was probably the portal sequence in Avengers Endgame, but probably my favourite individual scene of this year was Adam Driver singing Being Alive in Marriage Story. It just hit me like an emotional sucker punch to the gut, and yeah, it's a film which has stayed with me ever since I saw it back at the London Film Festival. I've watched it a few times now on Netflix, and yeah, it is probably going to be my pick for several Oscar wins. I think Adam Driver will win Best Actor, and so he should. But I know that it was on your list a little further down, wasn't it, Lee?
Yeah, that's right. Again, sort of 2020 has screwed over 2019 in this respect.
Yeah, but that's it for our 2019 retrospective, and now it's time to look at the decade of 2010 to 2019, for which for some reason doesn't have a catchy name like the Naughties did, but it was the decade that saw Disney buy pretty much every franchise going to become a mouse-shaped monopoly with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, and even buying 20th Century Fox. Only a small distributor called A24 would probably make a similar cultural impact over the last 7 years. When Moonlight unexpectedly triumphs over La La Land, we've seen The Reconnaissance, the return of action star Keanu Reeves, the memeability of stars like Jeff Goldblum, and the downfall of Harvey Weinstein, but the rise of Netflix and streaming services. So what's everyone's sort of favourite memories of the decade as a whole in terms of film and TV? Kim, let's come to you first.
I think there was a lot of good horror came out this year. I'm working on an article about the top 10 kind of horrors of the decade, and I feel like it was a lot easier for me to sort of come up with those ones than it was to just come up with a general list. Things like Cabin in the Woods and American Mary and Sinister and stuff. There's just so many horror films that came out in the last kind of 10 years that have automatically kind of come onto my favorites list. And I think as well it's just so exciting, a lot of I think being a horror fan as well, when you're younger you obviously don't get the chance to go and see a lot of these things in the cinema and things, so it's just amazing when stuff comes out just to be able to go and see it, and there just being so much available to you. So yeah, I think we were quite spoiled for horror movies anyway over the last sort of 10 years. There's been some absolutely amazing and very like different ones. It's nice to see some like different things like It Follows and The Babadook and stuff, just ones that are just kind of a bit like out of the norm. That just makes it like all the more interesting.
Yes, it was a decade of elevated horror.
Yes.
Highbrow horror films that are family dramas disguised as horror films like Hereditary and the like. Yeah,
yep.
So that was it. Lee, what about yourself? What did you make of this decade?
I think it's been a pretty awesome decade. I suppose it's like, it feels like you get more opportunities to see as much things as you want anymore. Like you have access to Netflix streaming services. I suppose when you do podcasts like this and stuff, you get access to film festivals so you can see even more stuff, and press days, etc. And it just feels like you're able to, if you want to see as much films as you want, you can now do that. And it's been kind of quite exciting. It makes it a bit overwhelming for choice, but it means that there's more hidden gems than ever out there that you can try and find. And I think that's made it sort of quite an exciting decade for me.
Absolutely. So I asked you guys before the podcast on here to come up with an answer to each of the 3 following questions. And so we'll find out. What was everyone's favourite actor of the decade? Lee, let's come to you first.
We've already done a podcast on him, and I've gone with Robert Pattinson. So this might also have been informed because I typed this up while watching The Lighthouse. So yeah, it would have to be Robert Pattinson.
I actually also went with Robert Pattinson. It was close to being Jake Gyllenhaal. Adam Driver was in the mix as well, but I think he came in sort of halfway through the decade. But I think I've chose Robert Pattinson purely from where he started at the beginning of the decade with the Twilight saga, and then where he's ended up. He's probably had the biggest sort of career change and positive boost, so that's why I went with him. Kim, who did you pick?
I went for Jonathan Groff. I hope I'm saying that right. He plays Holden in Mindhunter. It was kind of it was more TV stuff. He's also Kristoff in Frozen, which I have watched a lot over the last 4 years because, well, one, I love Disney, and 2, I also have a 4-year-old daughter who's obsessed with Frozen. But I watched all of Mindhunter this year. I thought he was amazing. And I also, I don't know if this counts because it started in 2009, but I just finished watching all 6 seasons of Glee, and Jonathan Groff plays Jesse St. James in that, and I forgot that he was in that and that also he can sing. So yeah, I watched on 2 very opposite sides of the coin of him playing things in TV shows, and I just like him and everything. So yeah.
Hello, we'll accept that. Yeah. So, favourite actress, Lee. Who did you pick?
This was a tough one, but I went with Emma Stone. I think the quality of the films that she's picked this in the kind of the past decade have made, she seems to sort of have the better quality to quantity ratio and stuff. So yeah, I've gone with Emma Stone. She's kind of become one of those actresses where you definitely want to seek out anything that she's in because she's likely to blow your mind in it. Excellent.
Kim, who have you gone with?
I went with Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She's in a couple of my favourite films from this decade. She was obviously in Scott Pilgrim. She was in 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I liked so much, and it made me feel so nauseous that I haven't watched it since I watched it in the cinema. And I also just today actually watched the remake / prequel of The Thing, and while the CGI effects in that are quite questionable, she is in it and she is amazing. And she was in loads of films before this decade that I loved as well. And I just kind of I watched Scott Pilgrim and The Thing quite recently, and it just kind of reminded me how much I love pretty much everything she's in.
Excellent. Now, my pick, it was a tough one. I was thinking of Natalie Portman because of Black Swan, Vox Lux, Annihilation and stuff, but I think she had a lot of time off, so she was quite sporadic in the number of films. So basically, Emma Stone was in the mix as well, but basically it turned out that the top 3 I had written down were basically all red-headed actresses. And so I'm still trying to go between 1 or 2, and I'm switching at the last minute. It was going to be Amy Adams, but I'm actually going Jessica Chastain, just purely for being consistently brilliant, and probably the highlights for me would be Miss Sloane and then Molly's Game as well. I just think she's fantastic anytime she's on screen, and I think she sort of came in just at the beginning of the decade with like The Help and stuff, and she's been on a roll ever since, and even great in like It Chapter 2 as well. So director wise, Lee, who have you picked?
So, excluding one film, this director I think has had a pretty consistent kind of decade, and I've gone with Ben Wheatley. So, starting with Kill List in 2011, Sightseers, A Field in England, High Rise, Free Fire, Happy New Year, Colin Bursted, and then kind of in the coming kind of year or two we'll have his remake of Rebecca, Freak Shift, and bizarrely Tomb Raider 2. I think Ben Wheatley has definitely been one of the most diverse directors of sort of the past decade, and I think I was kind of trying to think who it was, and some directors would be like, oh yeah, they maybe did one or two, or maybe they had two and there was a weak one. But I just think for sort of the consistency of films that he's put out, I think that each one of them has brought something really new to the table. I might not necessarily have been a fan of all of them, but I thought he was really one of the kind of the best directors of the decade.
Interesting. So Kim, who have you picked?
I think this one was the easiest one for me. I was just like, right, it's got to be. I went for Mike Flanagan. He did so much good horror in the past few years, and a lot of Stephen King stuff as well. So it was like Doctor Sleep, Gerald's Game, Hush, Oculus, The Haunting of Hill House as well, which I loved. And they're doing the sort of second season of that. It's coming up next year. I love everything he does. It's just always got this nice creepy angle to it, and it always just works at being scary. So I'm just super excited to see him do more stuff. And I read a thing the other day where someone was like, he should just do every Stephen King adaptation ever, and I probably agree with them, because it feels like he just sort of gets the tone of it just right and gets the bits that are supposed to be scary. So definitely that was the easiest choice for me. I was like, yep, that one.
Excellent choice. I think definitely in terms of the last decade, I think in terms of horror, he's probably the person who's come through the most and has sort of a very unique voice and is able to, do sort of like they say the Stephen King things, but he also can do sort of slasher, ghost stories. He can, any sort of horror element he turns his hand to, he can deliver fantastically. So yeah, very bright future, and looking forward to see what he does next. And for me, well, you've got the 5-star film Prisoners, 5-star film Enemy, 5-star film Sicario, 5-star film Arrival, 5-star film Blade Runner 2049, and then June coming next time. It's got to be Denis Villeneuve for me. The man has not put a foot wrong in the decade. Christopher Nolan could have been in the mix, but I think if it was the 21st century, Christopher Nolan probably would have won. But I think for me, it's got to be Denis Villeneuve. He hasn't put a foot wrong. Do you concur? Well, we're all entitled to our opinion. It's all good. We like a bit of variety on the show. If we all pick the same things, then it'd be too boring. But this leads us on nicely to our top films of the decade. Now, what I'm going to do is go through the top 10 films of the whole Nerd Party. What I did was put a call out to everyone who's contributed to the podcasts that go out on the Nerd Party to ask them for their top films of the decade. So I'm going to run through the top 10, and then we're going to go through our lists individually, because if we went through our lists first, it might give the game away as to what the top 10 would be. So for the Nerd Party, the results are in, and now what I did was basically, it was done through the number of times it was voted for, and then it also was a point weighing system as well. So I'll discuss that at the end. But at number 10, it was a tie between 2010's Inception and the Nerd Party's top film of 2018, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. In at number 9, Pop Pickers, it's the film that everyone scoffed at when it was first announced, but has gone on to become one of the defining films of the decade. It's David Fincher's The Social Network. At 8, the concluding part of a trilogy. No, it's not Rise of Skywalker, it's Before Midnight. Straight in at number 7, thanks to high scores from the A24 project, it's the decade's highest-grossing actress Scarlett Johansson driving around Glasgow in a white van. It's In Under the Skin. Just missing out on the top 5, it's Moonlight. No, wait, I've made a mistake. It's La La Land. Christopher Nolan makes his second appearance on the chart, a regular Ed Sheeran with his sci-fi epic Interstellar. Superheroes assemble at number 4 with 2012's Avengers, the original team-up. Driving full throttle into number 3 spot, it's a pure action movie of the decade, it's Mad Max Fury Road. At number 2, it's Fall, Skyfall, James Bond's best film of the decade. And finally, taking the top spot, it's a $150 million art house movie box office failure and unnecessary sequel to a 35-year-old sci-fi film that turned out to be our favourite film of the decade. It's Blade Runner 2049. So, time to run down Team Filibuster's choices. So, Kim, we're going to come to you first. What were your 10 to 6 for the decade?
So at number 10, I had Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Number 9 was Booksmart again. Number 8 was The Cabin in the Woods. Number 7 was Someone Great. And number 6 was Ready or Not.
Excellent choices. And Lee, what have you gone for?
I really, really struggled with this. I think I've seen too much, and it was just like, oh, I want to put this in, and then I felt like I couldn't include films from this year because I was like, oh my god, are they actually that good? So I've kind of tried to go with things that have had some sort of emotional impact or something on me that's kind of warranted a place, whether it's kind of appealed to me as a fan or a film lover. I don't know. This will probably change by the time this comes out. But at 10, I've gone with Interstellar, 9, Sing Street, 8, Before Midnight, 7, Skyfall, and 6, Jackie.
Okay, and for me, at 10, I've gone with Avengers Endgame, 9, Hereditary, 8, Social Network, 7, Arrival, and 6, Under the Skin. So, Kim, we're going to come round to you first time on the round robin. So, what have you picked for number 5?
I'm the same as Lee, actually. This was really hard, and I spent a lot of time reshuffling mine because we obviously had the list of the 2019. We had this list. I had a list of the top horrors of the decade. I was trying to make sure stuff didn't appear above stuff that had appeared above another. I was like, oh my god. But I was looking through my letterbox for a while, and I eventually remembered that Guardians of the Galaxy was one of my favourite films, and I was like, why is this not on my list? I think I've seen every single MCU film, obviously, in the lead up to the Avengers. I sort of watched a huge chunk of them in a chunk and then watched the rest as they came out. And I just don't think, while I liked a lot of them and enjoyed them, Guardians of the Galaxy, I remember I didn't know anything about, the whole Guardians of the Galaxy universe or whatever when the film came out. I was aware of the other superheroes, but these were people I'd never heard anything about. And I just remember, having such a good time in the cinema. I went to see it with a group of friends, and it's just, a really interesting superhero story, but it's set in space, and there was just a bunch of new characters, and it's funny, and there's, a bit of, mild swearing. It was just, a great mix of stuff, and I think it's the only MCU film that I actually, along with the second one, that I actually own on Blu-ray. I had such a good time with it. I love the whole Guardians of the Galaxy crew, and the first film was just hilarious, and yeah, it's such a nice a bit of a change up from the MCU films that I didn't enjoy so much. I just have so much fun every time I watch it, and it's one of those ones that every time it's on TV, a bit like Twister or Hot Fuzz, no matter what point of the film I catch it during, I'll watch the end of it because it's brilliant.
Twister, amazing film. and Hot Fuzz, I'm assuming that you must just have ITV2 in the background a lot.
Yeah, it's that or Back to the Future. That's it.
Okay, Lee, what have you got for us at number 5?
This was a film where I remembered bumping into a friend as soon as I'd seen this film, and they asked what I made of this film, and I was like, it was good. It somehow managed to make it to number 5 in my decade a couple of years on, and that's Phantom Thread by Paul Thomas Anderson, one of my favourite filmmakers. So it's all about renowned British dressmaker Ryan Reynolds Woodcock, who comes across Alma, a young strong-willed woman who soon becomes a fixture in his life as his muse and lover. So this was a film I've had this mistake pretty much with every Paul Thomas Anderson film post There Will Be Blood, is that I get incredibly hyped up for his films, and then they're not quite what I expect when I first see them, and I'm a bit frustrated. When I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, it was okay. And then when I rewatch them or take a bit of time to think about them, I come away with them thinking wow, that was a masterpiece, that was great. And The Phantom Thread was one of them. It's just a film I've thought a lot about since. I've rewatched it quite a lot of times. I think Daniel Day-Lewis, if this is to be his final performance, puts in a great one as well. I hope Vicky Creeps continues to kind of appear in good things. I think that her only thing that she's done post this film was it The Snowman, I think, or something like that. It was The Girl in the Spider's Web, which was absolutely atrocious. So I want to see her continue to get great roles off the back of this. Leslie Manville had a starring role. This score by Johnny Greenwood was something special. I just think this is a pitch perfect movie, and definitely one of Paul Thomas Anderson's greatest films.
Yeah, that was one where I was not too keen on it. I wasn't as blown away as other people, but it's one I think if I revisited it, I think my opinion would grow of it, because there's been a lot of discourse on it since, and I still love the fact that my favourite Phantom Thread sort of fact is the fact that Christopher Nolan took his kids to see it, and then basically they were calling him Woodcock for months afterwards, because basically they felt that that was their dad on screen. So yeah, that's my favourite thing about that. Number 5, I've picked Marriage Story, which I've already discussed and praised already. So we can move on quickly to someone else's choice. So Kim, what have you picked for us at number 4?
So I thought I definitely had to get a Disney film in this list somewhere. I'm a massive Disney fan, so I went with Moana, which I think was one I completely missed, like when it was out in the cinema. But it was one that, again, thanks to my daughter being obsessed with the songs, we got it on DVD, and it's just I just really think it's a lot of fun. There's been some like rubbish kind of Disney films in between that kind of classic chunk when I was a kid. And I think Moana's brilliant. It's a great story of a princess on an island, and there's like a goddess that kind of looks after nature and stuff called Tafiti. Someone steals her heart, and basically the crops start failing, and Moana sets off on a quest to return the heart to Tafiti and like make everything fine again. And it's just a cool like story of like a princess being strong. There's literally no love interest in it for a Disney film, which is very impressive. It's got The Rock in it, and there's just loads of amazing songs as well. It's really catchy. It just feels like it could be like part of that kind of classic Disney chunk, and with like The Little Mermaid and The Lion King and stuff. And it's really sad as well. It just makes me like tear up every time. It's amazing. So yeah, I was debating whether to include Frozen, as I have been forced to watch that many times and I do love it, but I think Moana is just like a perfect modern Disney film.
I think you did the right thing by picking the one Disney film that's got the Dwayne The Rock Johnson in it, you know. So like, I'm always going on about The Rock on this podcast, so yeah, I think you've made the right choice.
Cool.
Lee, what have you picked for us at number 4?
So I've gone with Lady Bird by Greta Gerwig. So it's all about Saoirse Ronan as a California high school student, Christine Lady Bird McPherson, who wants to run away from her sort of hometown in Sacramento, California, and go where culture is in New York. This is a film that I just love, to be honest. It's not one of the top 5 films really of the decade in terms of if we were like to break down quality of this and that, but it's one of the ones, again, I keep coming back to. I've watched this one quite a lot of times since. I think this movie was probably one of the movies that kind of pushed us towards maybe doing a podcast all on these type of films that A24 release, and I just think it has incredible performances from Saoirse Ronan. It was my first introduction to Beanie Feldstein, who we've kind of discussed in this episode. It's got Lucas Hedges, Laurie Metcalf, Tracy Letts, Timothy Chalamet. It's got a perfect cast. I think the success of Little Women has shown that Greta Gerwig wasn't just a flash in a pan with this film as well. I think, again, it's an incredibly quotable and memorable film, and it's just one that I'm going to continue to go back to, and probably it will be one of my most watched films of the decade.
It's hella tight, that's what it is. Hella tight. So for me, I've picked number 4. Bong Joon-ho is in the news at the moment because everyone's raving about Parasite, but for me, my number 4 of the decade is sadly the rather underseen, thanks to Harvey Scissorhands Weinstein, Snowpiercer, which is action film sort of set on a train, the horizontal high-rise, if one would, where a group of people living in poverty at the back of a train, which is on a circular route around the world due to a terrible global warming thing where basically the earth is frozen, and they decide one day that they're fed up of living at the back of the train and decide to move through to the front of the train where the rich live and take over. And it's just an incredibly inventive, stylish, and sort of actually socially relevant film with a good moral to the story, where it's actually, since it's finally sort of starting to appear on stuff like Netflix and Amazon Prime and now, so people are finally getting a chance to see it, and it's actually become more relevant now, I think, with all the discussions on global warming and stuff like this, and the whole 90%, 99%, 1% and stuff like this. So it's just fantastic. It's Chris Evans' finest performance. I always say that a bearded Chris Evans is a better actor than a non-bearded Chris Evans, and that's why everyone got so excited when bearded Chris Evans turned up in Avengers Infinity War, and then were immediately sad in Endgame when he shaved it off, because he's much better with the beard. And it's got great turns from Ed Harris, Tilda Swinton with her shoe speech, just fantastic. And for me, it's one which I will always rave about to people and recommend to people. So yeah, it's my number 4. So Kim, let's come to you. What have you picked for us at number 3?
My number 3 is Sinister. This is just one of my favorite horror films ever. I went to see it in the cinema and it was absolutely terrifying. There was one jump scare. I say jump scare, it makes it sound cheap. It was actual proper meant to be a jump scare scary thing that I was so like tense because you were staring at something kind of in the foreground and something happens kind of up above that I just like swore incredibly loud in the middle of the cinema because I was just like, oh my god, like so I always remember that effect that it had on me. It was proper terrifying. It's the story of Ethan Hawke is playing like a true crime writer who kind of had a really popular book and he's kind of not really lived up to that success since. He finds about this family that got murdered in a house, and so he does what every logical horror movie dad does, and he moves his family into that house so that he can write about the story but doesn't tell his wife or anything. And he finds this box of old like tapes up in the attic, and they show the family who died in the house, which is the opening scene, and it was in the trailers and things. It's like a whole family like hung from a tree, and one of the branches gets sawn off and they all like die, but all the other tapes in the attic as well are loads of other families, other locations over the years dying in really horrible ways. There's one involving a lawnmower that will haunt you forever once you see it, and it's just, I mean, the sequel to this is absolutely terrible. Like, do not even waste your time. But Sinister was so good. Again, it was just something a bit different, and actually scary and really tense, and it was just really interesting. And I've watched it like loads of times since, and I don't think it ever kind of gets less scary. It's such a cool story and premise, and yeah, I just love it. It proper terrified me, which is what I usually look for in a horror film. So yeah. Yeah,
no, I loved Sinister. It was I think it was my favourite sort of horror film of that year. I loved the sort of cardigan with the patches on it. I really wanted one of those for when I was writing and stuff like that. But I think Ethan Hawke is someone who can sort of deliver a sort of a realness and a gravity to a performance, even if it's something like a schloggy horror film. He brings a sort of quality to it. And was it lawn work? Was that the moment that you... Yes, no, I was exactly the same. It was just... It's one of the best jump scares of the decade, of actually probably of any horror film. It just sort of... It lulls you into a false sense of security, and then something comes out of nowhere and you just like... You're screaming out loud and then realising how ridiculous it is. So... Lee, have you seen Sinister?
I have indeed, actually. A rare horror franchise film that I've gone to see. Yeah, I went to see this one and I was absolutely all on board with it until it became Whisper It, a horror movie with like, I can't remember what it was, like Ghost or something along those lines, or whatever the paranormal aspect of it was. Like, I was all on board with it when it was kind of playing it as like something real life had happened. It was like something that could be realistic. And then when it kind of went a bit supernatural, that's when it kind of lost me. But Ethan Hawke was fantastic in it, and I definitely remember that sort of lawnmower scene. That definitely gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, no, I think that's why it probably... I think it's something like that which stays... That's the best sort of horror film for me, something that stays with you long after you've gone. Sometimes you just watch something and go, oh, that was fun, that I jumped and whatever, but then you just sort of forget it. Something like Sinister and whatever can sort of stay with you, and I think that's the sort of best sort of horror films. So we are now back to Lee. What have you got for us at number 3?
So I've gone for Melancholia, directed by Lars von Trier, at number 3. I think this was the second part of the Depression trilogy. That's a kind of catchy one for putting on a box set. So it's all about two sisters who find their already strained relationship challenged as a mysterious new planet threatens to collide with Earth. So this was a fantastic film, one that really had an impact on me. I remember taking a girlfriend at the time along to see the film, and she was incredibly hateful of the film, and I think that's kind of true of it. I think this is a really love or hate film, and I think Kristen Dunst, Charlotte Gainsbourg, we know for those who are updating their Lee Hutchinson Wikipedia, who is one of my celebrity crushes. This is just a really unique sci-fi film distilled down to an absolute drama level. I just love this idea, like the world's about to end and it all plays out in sort of this mansion house and how this family are feeling it. And I think it shows this kind of character with depression, how it badly affects her life in the first half of the film, but then as the world is coming to an end, she is embodied and empowered as all the other kind of characters around them sort of succumb to stress and anxiety that, oh, actually we're all off to die. I think it's such a unique film, and one that has really stuck with me for kind of just shy of a decade now, I think.
Yeah, no, this was one where, yeah, it's probably my favorite of the Lars von Trier movies because it was just so sort of different and out there. And yeah, sort of, Kirsten Dunst is someone who gets a lot of stick for not, people don't think she's all that great an actress. I think some of it may be sort of down to the thing she's most well known for is probably like the Spider-Man movies where, she hasn't got a great character in that. But I think, yeah, she really sort of proves in films like this that she is a real sort of talent, and it's, yeah, some of the imagery in that is yeah, like I say, something that will stay with you long after you've left the screen. So, Tim, have you seen that one?
I haven't, no. And I remember reading about it a while ago and thinking it sounded cool, and I completely forgot about it until right now. But I do love Kirsten Dunst. She was one of my favorite actresses from my teen years, from Bring It On, Virgin Suicides, and Small Soldiers, and Interview with a Vampire. So, yeah, I will definitely check that out.
Excellent. So, for me, number 3, I have gone with Mad Max Fury Road, and yeah, this was just an absolute sort of thrill ride from beginning to end. It was another one of those films where no one was crying out for a Mad Max sequel, but then, George Miller, the director of Happy Feet, delivers, and Babe, and, delivers, just a pure adrenaline thrill ride where it's basically just one really long car chase split up into lots of different little segments, but it totally works. Tom Hardy does his usual sort of mumbling thing, but I think the real sort of standout performance in this is Charlize Theron as Furiosa. She's just an absolute queen, and the scene where she's sort of in the desert on her knees, sort of screaming out at the desperation of the whole situation is just fantastic. And if nothing else, this film gave us the great Tom Hardy meme of "that's bait" for any time that someone says something slightly controversial on Twitter and is clearly trying to get a response. You just put the thing that just says "that's bait." So yeah, for me, number 3. So Kim, let's come back to you. What have you picked for us as your second favourite film of the decade?
So this is my last horror film in this list, and it's the remake of Evil Dead, which I talked about a few episodes ago for our Halloween movie marathon. And I actually just wrote a big piece for Jump Cut online about why this is my favourite horror film of the decade. I just think I think it's an amazing horror film on its own as well, but I just think it's such a good remake. And it's sort of an example of why you can take a film like The Evil Dead, which is such an amazing film, and you may not think it needs remade, but you can remake it and not ruin the legacy. I was doing inverted commas there, you can't see it. You can just make something amazing, and I just thought it was brilliant. And I've watched it. I've actually watched it a few times this year because I've wrote about it a couple of times, and it's just I just love it. Every time, it's such. I think, if you're going to go for why people are stuck in the cabin in the middle of the woods and why they continue to stay there when shit gets weird, this is a perfect example of how to kind of make it realistic. And Mia, our main character, has a drug problem. She goes to the cabin in the woods to kind of kick it cold turkey, and her friends agree to stay with her. And of course, because she is the weakest character in the film, the demons target her first, and therefore her friends don't believe her when she says she's seeing things in the woods and she's throwing up and everything, because they just think it's the drugs leaving her system, and they don't really realize what's going on until it's too late. And yeah, it's just I'm not the biggest fan of gore and blood and things, but I am a massive fan of practical effects, and I think apart from a few digital enhancements and things, everything in this film was done practically, and you can tell, and it's 10 times more disgusting. There's a lot of bits with people's arms getting ripped off or cut off or trapped under a car and then pulled off, and it's just disgusting. There's so much blood in this as well. That finale has oh my god, I know It Chapter 2 apparently had the most blood ever in a film, but Evil Dead remake looks like it had the most blood in a film. And yeah, it's just amazing, and I think it makes a great double bill with the original Evil Dead. They both kind of have that scary element rather than the kind of horror comedy, and I just it's a perfect example of a remake and a brilliant, scary, gory horror film all by itself.
I caught this one at the cinema, and I must say I don't remember anything apart from the speaker in the system. The cinema was broken that day, and it just made for a really terrible experience. So maybe I need to rewatch that one at home.
I really enjoyed this one, and it was a great example of a remake done well and done in a different enough way to stand out on its own. And yeah, I think the ending is just insane. And I think if you're a fan of horror remakes that have an incredibly bloody finale, then I can also recommend Suspiria remake, which just goes up to 11 in the batshit insane sort of style, where it all just goes, you can't even believe what you're seeing. It's a fairly sedate film up until the final chapter, and then it's like, what? So yeah, I can highly recommend that one as well. So so Lee, what have you picked for us for number 2?
So I've gone with Under the Skin. So a mysterious young woman, which is actually an alien, seduces lonely men in the evening hours in Scotland, where events lead her to begin a process of self-discovery. So yeah, I love, like, kind of Scotland seems to be getting showcased more and more. Like, I was out for a run yesterday, and like I went past like all these different like trucks that were kind of shooting on kind of Regent's Road. So like you kind of have Outlander that's been shot here and still shooting here. You've had Avengers, the Fast and the Furious movies next year, and it's great having things like Under the Skin here as well, where it's not just the big blockbusters that are coming, but you have like one of the greatest art house movies of the past decade kind of shooting here and showcasing Scotland, Sauchiehall Street, Buchanan Galleries, you know, all these places. And I just think it's incredibly performed. The score is unforgettable, and it's a movie that I caught in the cinema opening weekend, and I've never been able to stop kind of thinking about since. I think it's truly one of the best films of the decade, and I think to date still A24's best film.
I would agree with pretty much all of that. Yep, A24's best film. The score is superb. Yeah, it's one film which, when I first came out of it, I was like, I'm not entirely sure what I've seen. I don't know if I like it or not, but I know that I have to see it again. And then I watched it again, and I was like, yeah, this is a masterpiece. It's just utterly fantastic. And yeah, probably the best that Scarlett Johansson's actually been. Actually, I just said that about Marriage Story, but actually now thinking about it, she is probably better in Under the Skin, just because it's so completely different of what you would expect from her as well, and still the only film that she's been in that features the word Tesco's, because everyone seems to pluralise Tesco as a supermarket to Tesco's. So yeah, Kim, have you seen Under the Skin? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I haven't seen it actually. Again, it's one I think I read about a little while ago, and I was like, oh, that's not okay, that sounds weird, but yeah, no, I'll need to. Again, I do have a massive girl crush on Scarlett Johansson, so I'll probably need to check that out.
Well, then you'll be very, very pleased if you ever watch Under the Skin, and I'll just leave it at that.
I can't wait for like the moment of Kim being like, for God's sake, why wasn't I picked up by Scarlett Johansson in her big white rape van?
So for myself, number 2, I've gone with I would classify this one as a horror film. It was probably one of the first films of the decade for me. I actually saw it in New York first time round, and I've not been able to get it out of my mind, and that was Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan, featuring Natalie Portman as a ballerina who drives herself to the brink of insanity in trying to get the lead role in a new production of Swan Lake, to the point where her mind fractures and she becomes a good swan and a black swan. And for me, it's a sort of look at sort of breakdown of mental health, but it's also a horror film. If you look at it, as she actually potentially transforms into a swan at one point, and it's just, I mean, her performance in this is rightly won the Best Actress Oscar. It's got an amazing score by Clint Mansell, who sort of has updated the Swan Lake themes and stuff to make it truly something really terrifying. And at the end of the film, so she sort of falls down after a final performance and sort of goes, it was perfect. And for me, this film is perfect. Let's say everyone else think of Black Swan. Is this one that you like?
I absolutely love it. This was my first ever film I saw as a Picture House member, so yeah, it has also a special memory for that. And it almost, I always thought of it as like a previous decade film. I genuinely love this film, and I still get the scares thinking about that nail cutting scene. I think it's definitely a modern masterpiece.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I've seen it once and I did really like it, and it's one of those ones that I feel like, yeah, the more you watch it, the more you would get from it. But that fingernail scene really puts me off going and watching it again, because like fingernails and teeth and ankles for me are big horror movie no-nos. And yeah, I just keep thinking about that. I see that gif of her fingernail coming off so much on like Twitter and stuff. I hate it. It's just but no, I do need to go and watch it again. I did really enjoy it. I do like horror like that that's just a bit weird and creepy. So yeah, I'll need to watch it again and see if I can absorb more of its message the second time.
Absolutely. So here we are, final round. What has everyone picked for their ultimate film of the decade? Kim, let's come to you.
So yeah, I'm rubbish at ranking lists like this. I never know where to put stuff. But when I was looking at my list, I was like, what is the film that I've probably watched the most and I've probably like got the most enjoyment out of? And considering I just said about 10 minutes ago that I've just finished watching all 6 seasons of Glee, this might not come as a shock, but my favourite film of the decade was Pitch Perfect. It's the story about Anna Kendrick goes to college, and her dad kind of insists that she like buckles down and like joins a group and gets involved and stuff, and she ends up joining this a cappella singing group, and it's just a great like funny story anyway, like following their kind of need to go through a couple of rounds of a competition till they get to the final competition. It's good anyway, it's interesting, but like all the kind of a cappella mashed up versions of songs are brilliant, and when it came out I listened to that soundtrack non-stop, and it's weird because I still haven't watched Pitch Perfect 2 or 3. I think I'm sort of worried about them ruining the legacy of the first one because I just love it so much. But yeah, it's just it's amazing, it's hilarious, it's one of those films that I actually quote like quite a lot, and whenever I hear like one of the songs from it, it just brings back memories of Pitch Perfect. So it's much cheerier than a lot of the horror films on my list, but I probably watched it the most. I've probably watched it like something ridiculous like 40 times since it came out. So yeah.
I have never finished Pitch Perfect 1. I was locked out of my flat, which was across the road from the cinema at the time, and I was like, right, I'll just go in, keep warm, and I watched that. I think I watched up until she does like has her first sing song in the shower or something not long after that, and then I was let back into the flat. But I have seen Pitch Perfect 2 and 3, so we kind of maybe have evened each other out a little bit.
I can highly recommend Pitch Perfect 2, Pitch Perfect 3 not so much, but I think it's a good way to go for these, because when you sort of go on the best of the decade lists, it's like you look through all your different lists for each year and you go, okay, those were my favourite film, those are the ones I picked out each year. But I think when it comes to something like this, I think it has to be something that you actually enjoy, and it's the ones that you come back to again and again and again. So I think, it's a great choice for your number one pick. And Lee, we're going to come to you, and if I could bet my mortgage, I think I know what you're going to pick. Before you even sent me the list, I knew it was going to be at the top of the list. But for everyone else who wouldn't know, what have you selected for us?
I've gone for 2012's Frances Ha, directed by Noah Baumbach and co-written by Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. It was never going to be anything but this. It's the film I've probably watched the most in the past decade. I think it's the one I related to the most at that period of my life. I'd kind of broken up from a relationship. I was back living home for kind of less than a year and stuff like that. I'd moved home so many times, as the kind of thing was. You have these year leases. I found it all painfully relatable as I was sort of trying to get my life to get together, really, essentially make some sense of it and kind of be a grown-up, I guess. And I just think it was definitely one of the most perfect films of the decade, let alone ever. I think it's Noah Baumbach's best film, Greta Gerwig's best performance, and it's one I continually go back to, and its impact is felt in many ways. Whenever I'm running, there's a scene in Frances Ha where she's out kind of running down the street and to David Bowie's Modern Love, and she does a little spin in the street as she's just running away. I do that whenever I'm out for a run. If there is space to do it and there's no other runners around me and that song comes on my playlist, I will do that. So that film has had a profound impact in many ways, emotionally, personally, and in how I dance and run. So if you are probably both going to be lucky enough to be invited to my wedding one day, that song will come on and you'll know why.
Absolutely. Yeah, I knew you were going to pick this, and it's completely, you've justified your choice, I think. Knowing you, it was always going to be this one. And it's a film for me that I didn't really like first time round, but it has grown on me, and as a lover of New York, I've definitely done it. And it was sort of early Adam Driver, and he's just come on leaps and bounds. But it's great. I think it's Greta Gerwig's finest performance of the decade as well. And so now it comes to my final choice, and it was a film which I never really wanted or needed, but when it came out, I was completely blown away by it, and it's Blade Runner 2049. This was, it's like I said when we were talking about the sequel, to a 35-year-old sci-fi film that failed initially on box office but came to cult following. Somehow someone gave $150 million to Denis Villeneuve to make what turned out to be a very European art house version, not of a film, not an action blockbuster sequel that many people might have thought. He also did the ultimate two fingers to everyone and said, I'm not even going to answer the question about whether Deckard is a replicant or not. I'm going to keep you leaving up to that. You know, I think Ryan Gosling is an actor who sometimes gets a bit of criticism for being a bit monotonous in one note. Here it kind of works because he's actually a replicant, and you know, there's just so many I mean, this is the most stunning looking film I think I've seen of the decade. The cinematography is what finally won Roger Deakins a best cinematography Oscar. You know, he's could have won several over, but this was the one that finally did it. And, you know, it's got one of the most original and beautiful sex scenes of the year, where it's like Ryan Gosling is basically having sex with a woman who then has the sort of artificial intelligence girlfriend crafted over her. And it's just, it's a film which just has stayed with me ever since. And it's a film which was about 3 hours long, but I could have quite happily spent 5 or 6 hours in the world that they crafted. And yeah, for me, it's my film of the decade. What do you guys make of that choice?
A fantastic choice.
I've not seen it.
Well, maybe it'll appear in your best of next decade.
I don't actually think I've seen a single Ryan Gosling film. I was saying this the other day to someone and they were very shocked, but I don't think I've ever seen anything with Ryan Gosling in it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I think there's a potential episode for next year. We'll have to do a top 5 Ryan Goslings. I could certainly say Nice Guys would be one that I would highly recommend. I'm sure, yeah, we definitely have to sort that out over the next year, I think. But that sort of nicely brings us on to the end of the episode, where we're going to enter 2020. So one final question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot. One film that you're looking forward to next year. Now, Lee, I understand this is going to be quite difficult for you since you've already watched half of the films which are coming out next year. But if there's what's one film which you're looking forward to that you haven't actually seen yet?
No Time to Die, the new James Bond film. So it comes out the day before I head off to Paris for the Paris Marathon. So I'm more excited for that than heading off to Paris.
I guess, you know, there's a chance it could be good, you know, because it's kind of like the sort of Star Trek thing where it's sort of odd numbers and even numbers, you know. Casino Royale was great, then Quantum Solace was bad, Skyfall was great, Spectre wasn't very good, so this is his 5th one, so I guess it could turn things around. Well, I guess we'll have to see in April when it comes out. Kim, is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to next year?
Oh man, I had a quick...
I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I was going to say, I had a quick Google of horror films that are coming out next year, and there's so many. There's there's a new Halloween film coming out, which the last one wasn't too good, but I'm excited to see where they go with it. And there's things like The Grudge and The New Quiet Place, The New Conjuring, but I think the one I'm most excited for, and it's because I've seen the trailer for it, is The Invisible Man. It's got Elizabeth Moss in it, and it just looks like proper terrifying. I feel like they've done a lot of things with all the kind of old Universal monsters and stuff to make them scarier. There's never really been an Invisible Man film apart from I guess Hollow Man's kind of a bit on that kind of vein, but the trailer looks amazing. It looks really scary and terrifying, so I am super excited to see that when it comes out.
I'm very excited by that one because it's written and directed by Lee Winnell, who did the Saw films, the Insidious ones, and then also one of the most underrated films of the last decade, Upgrade, which was a fantastic sort of sci-fi film with some crazy action in it. So I'm interested to see what he does with it, especially as it's got this sort of domestic violence sort of thing and sort of going through the film. So it's going to be very interesting to see that. But for me, given my favourite director of the decade, it's got to be Denis Villeneuve's version of Dune, which has got one of the greatest casts of all time, and I'm very looking forward to that. But then, having just seen the trailer for Tenet, Christopher Nolan's new film, it could be that one as well. But I think there is a lot of good things to look forward to in 2020, and we'll be here to bring you all that throughout the year, every week. So thank you all for joining me at the end of this roundup episode, and we look forward to seeing you all again in the new year. Bye bye, everyone.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd